Hi there, welcome back to my channel. This is Live and Learn. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch today's video. I enjoy making these videos. I enjoy this channel and the content that it allows me to provide. I'm always looking to give something of substance in the messages that I share on here. Everything comes from my mind, from my heart, as original as possible. You may have heard these things talked about before. You may have heard them discussed several times. In fact, I don't think I'm sharing any new information on here, just a different perspective. And it's one that only myself can provide. And we all have that ability. We can all have that unique take. We all have a voice. And sometimes we don't even realize how important the way we look at things, how important our take is. And so I want to encourage you to look into that as well. Maybe it's not on YouTube, maybe it's something else, but we should express ourselves as if we find our own opinion and our own perspective valuable. And I say that because I think that it is. I think it is valuable. Human beings, we have a value to us. We have a mind, we have an ability to create and do things. So we should take that serious. But, I'm like many of us, I get caught up in the day to day. I get caught up in the things that are right in front of me. I don't always see the bigger picture. And some of that is a part of why we don't necessarily say more, right? We don't express ourselves more. Something interesting over the last couple of weeks here in Southern California. I talked about it in, I think the first video that I made this month, the rain, right? I mean, if you're from Southern California, if you've been here your whole life, like myself, you know that we've had in the past a reputation that it doesn't rain a lot here. And it doesn't, or it didn't used to. But last year and this year, we've been bombarded with so much rain. Yes, it's good for the environment. Yes, it's good for to fight and combat drought, right? Water is just ridiculously important. And those of us that have grown up in a modern society, we take that for granted every single day. We don't realize just how precious it is to have fresh drinking water, really whenever we want. So water is very important. So yeah, I'm grateful for the rain, but it's funny because you can tell with all the things that are happening, right? And I don't want to take this lightly because there's some people that are facing some real challenges right now because of this weather. Because the fact of the matter is we're not ready for it. Like we don't know what to do when it starts raining like this in SoCal. And it's like our environment, our landscape, our infrastructure, whatever you want to call it, isn't ready either. You've got mudslides, you've got houses getting swept away in these just flash floods, you've got people being put in dangerous situations because of weather that we're just not prepared for. We're just not used to it. And yesterday I spent some time with some friends of mine, close family friends. Shout out to the Van Winkles. I got love for all of you. But I was up there and my friend mentioned something. He was like, hey, he goes, they didn't even get a chance to repair these roads before the next storm came. Like we just went through something. We just got dumped on with all this rain, messed up our roads, caused all kinds of, damage and just all kinds of headaches, right? He says, and before we even got to repair it, there's more rain coming. And I started thinking about that. And I started thinking like, what this weather does, it reveals things. It reveals weaknesses that we have in our infrastructure, in our landscape. It reveals issues that we didn't know were there. until they're right in front of us and we have to deal with it. They just shut down a highway off ramp, I read in the news, because of a sinkhole that developed. I mean, just how would you know? You know, millions of people exit that way every single day, probably not thinking about a sinkhole that they're driving over. But what happened? The rain came, it was heavy, and now there it is. And it says that the ramp is closed indefinitely. Why? Because that's a big problem. You're not just going to patch that up. You're not just going to throw some gravel in there and call it a day. You got to make sure. Now you got to go in there and you got to make sure, like, hey, not only do we need to repair this, but how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Is it even possible? And what I found when I'm having these trying seasons, 2024 is just, it started off really strange for me. It's almost like me and the weather were in step together. And what I found is that when I am experiencing these types of seasons in my life, it reveals things about me. Weaknesses. It reveals issues. It's like all my dysfunction comes out. Like imagine just a little, like when I was little, me and my sister we'd set up all of our stuffed animals and we'd play. We'd have them all lined up in a row. And imagine that's my dysfunction. All my dysfunctions just go and they sit down together and they're just staring at me. And I have no other place to look. I have to stare them right in the face. It's amazing. Maybe amazing is the wrong word. It's frightening what certain things will reveal about us. What things will become of, our circumstance. And in some ways, it's a good thing because those things are there, whether we want to ignore them or we want to pretend they're not there, or I don't want to acknowledge it, right? Like that sinkhole, I don't want to think about that. But shoot, man, when it opens up on the road, what am I supposed to do? I got to deal with it now. And that's just what this year has been for me. It's one of the reasons why I'm taking a social media break. I went a couple of weeks back to hear this woman that I follow on Instagram. Her name is Nadia Bolz-Weber. And we went to hear her give a talk, and she said something that I think has a lot to do with what I'm talking about now. And I don't remember her exact words. I wish I would have. I wish I would have recorded it. But she talks about how, this modern world that we live in now, with our technology, with our transportation, with just the access to information at the tip of our fingers, right? We all have phones. Our lives pretty much they revolve around that phone, right? For most of us. And she goes, I have to remind myself that we haven't been living like this very long. And she's talking about in the grand scope of history, right? In the history of mankind, of all those years that have passed before, we've only been in this segment of modern times for a very small percentage of that full lifespan of humanity. She's like, and I have to remind myself of that. She goes, but I also have to remind myself, or also have to remember that those instincts that my ancestors had, that they had to develop, right, for survival, those things remain. And the brain doesn't know hey, we're in a modern society now. I don't need to freak out as much. I don't need to worry about danger as much. New things don't need to scare me as much. See, our brains don't know that. They're wired this way. But she says, I don't think we're meant to experience this nonstop information, this high-speed world that is just constantly bombarding us. Whether it's social media scrolling or watching news, and no wonder so many of us have become obsessed with a certain side or taking sides. What is that doing to us mentally? What is it doing to us spiritually, emotionally? And so these are the things I've been grappling with this year. For whatever reason, this year has presented itself to me as this season where I've got a lot of soul searching to do. I've got a lot of things that I need to engage with. And I want to say that part of it is just the world that we live in now. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed it all, but I haven't really been on social media. And I don't know when I'm going to go back on there. And it's not necessarily a good thing for me as far as promoting my business, because that's really the only advertising that I do. And eventually I will be back on there, but not right now. Not right now. I'm looking for ways to give my mental health. I'm looking for ways to set myself up to get healthier mentally, physically. I've got a lot of work to do. Right? It's just like when all this rain dries up, we got a lot of work to do. Because it's going to come back. And the fact is, even after all the work that we do, once that rain starts coming, and it starts coming heavy, and it's just dumping on us, more things will be revealed. And I'll end with this. I love this. One of my favorite quotes in one of my favorite books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Robert Covey. If you haven't read it or you haven't listened to it on an audio, on Audible or any of these, audiobook apps, even YouTube, I think, has it. I encourage you to go do that because that book changed my life. But he says something in one of the chapters. He's talking about seek first to understand, then to be understood. And we wonder why there's so much animosity. Well, how can we even take the time to understand if we're just being constantly bombarded, if we're just constantly being rained on with information, right? We're just being given things. And it's in our face. And we've got to choose sides. I don't even have time to understand. And worse, it leaves me with very little time to seek understanding within myself, to really get to the bottom of it. So I think that in 2024, that is going to be, that's my mission. That's my responsibility. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. I love that quote. Anyway, thank you for listening to me. I'm just giving it to you that as things, develop in my mind and what I'm going through and what I'm dealing with and how I'm trying to navigate these challenges. Sharing with you so that this guy here, this life coach here is not sitting at the mountaintop looking down and saying, "Oh, I remember when I used to struggle. I remember when I used to feel that way. I remember when I had issues. I remember when." No, I don't need to remember that far, because a lot of these things are right in front of me. And I say that so that we can relate to each other. See, I may be just as human as you, but there are certain things that I've already been able to develop past. I've already been able to overcome. Perhaps you haven't. And perhaps there's things that you've been able to do the same with, and I haven't. That's what this is about. That's why I welcome everyone on this channel, because as community, right, that togetherness, this is how we learn how to get better, by sharing and borrowing from others and what they've said. And so this is just my contribution. And so thank you again for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to donate to my channel financially, you've got some links in the description of the video that you can do that. You can follow me on TikTok and Instagram. I haven't been on there much lately. I don't know when I'll be back on, but you're welcome to. And you're welcome to send me a direct message through Instagram. I still get those. If you have any suggestions or you have any questions, the handle is @LiveToLearnCoaching. It's also in the description of this video. So let me know how I can help. Let me know what I could share that would be good. And yeah, thanks again for watching. Appreciate it.